So Keith, thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me.
This can be a better time because we all get our assessed value, and then we all have to pay our property tax. COVID makes our property, value gone up very, very high. But when it comes back to, now in the last 6 months or 7 months, the government has, hiked 6 times interest rate. So the market is very different now. My questions to you is that who owns the most expensive house or any properties, commercial, whatever, combined? Who owns the most expensive properties in BC?
It's a good question. Fortunately, BC Assessment actually publishes the top 500 valued properties.
Oh.
And this year, number 1 was Chip Wilson, Lululemon founder.
Wow. Yeah. And how much was it?
I think it was somewhere around $74 million.
Oh God！ 咁我就問佢啦，我話究竟咧最貴係咩物業啦？咁佢話咧BC Assessment 嗰度咧，佢就要登晒頭500位最貴嘅咧就會登咗出嚟嘅。咁我哋咧就而家淨係講第一位啊，唔好講咁多。第一位咧就係你知啊，大家好多咧，如果做中意運動嘅咧，知道有我哋一個大名牌，全世界都有 L 字嘅，即係好似檸檬咁樣咧嚇，唔好同佢賣廣告啦。咁呢個老細咧就叫 Chip Wilson 啦，佢嘅物業咧就喺 Point Grey 嗰度嘅，7400萬。So how much property tax does he pay?
So around $476,000 is what he paid last year.
Wow！ 舊年咧佢俾47萬嘅物業稅。47萬仲成個 apartment 都可以買到出嚟 ，so somebody can buy a condo with that property tax, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, just out of curious, how many properties do we have in the whole BC? 咁我問佢啦，我究竟成個 BC 省咧有幾多物業咧 ？So how many properties do we have?
So if you include everything, so all the residential, condos, commercial office, there's 2,160,000 properties.
Wow, OK， 咁佢意思咧就話我哋全省咧唔理你係商業、物業咩業都好啦，總之咧就總共有2168280個物業嗰度嘅。So so with all these properties, what is the total values of the assessed values then？ 因為我就問佢啦，我話既然有咁多200幾萬、210幾萬嘅物業嘅時候咧，究竟總值係點樣咧 ？So what is the total value?
That's $2.7 trillion this year.
Oh my God, too many zero.
That's right.
原來咧，我哋嘅全省嘅物業嘅總值咧就係有2.7萬億。2.7萬億嘅，咁你都即係非常之厲害啊嚇！咁 so how much has it gone up from last year?
It's 12%. The whole province went up 12% in total. That total value.
Wow！ 佢話咧，同上一次嗰個BC Assessment 嚟到計咧，即係比較咧，總值係多咗12%。So it will be from 2021 to 2022 then.
That's right. Yeah. July 1st, 2021 to July 1st, 2022.
OK， 即係佢基本上咧，因為咧我哋係7月1號咧嚟到做政府估價㗎嘛 ，OK， 物業估價，咁咧所以變咗呢個咧就係升咗12%咧，嗰個價值咧係由2021年嘅7月1號咧就到2022年嘅。好啦 ，so how much the government can get property tax revenue from all these properties then?
Yeah, so if you add up every property tax bill, again, commercial, residential, it's almost $8 billion throughout the whole province.
Wow! Yeah. So 我就頭先問佢啦，我話咧，即係如果你話政府收幾多錢啊？正所謂啦，即係佢哋有幾多物業嘅稅咧，就即係呢個係庫房收入嚟㗎嘛。咁全部加埋咧幾多錢咧？佢話咧有80億，全省咧就有80億。嘅物業稅嘅 ，wow, okay, so this is a lot of zeros that we have to work. A lot of zeros. So right now is that I mentioned to the audience, to my listener, July 1st usually is the day that they basically assess the value. So I want to ask is that do they ever go to any of the properties physically, because I own properties. I've never seen anybody came to my property. So I mean, how does it work? So let me translate that. 咁我問佢啦，我話究竟咧呢啲我哋咁多物業啦，200幾萬個物業喺度， 會唔會有冇咁多人手啊？我自己擁有物業，我相信大家聽眾咧擁有物業咧，你有幾多個真係有政府嗰啲人咧行埋去同你敲下門話，我而家嚟同你做個估價要睇啦，我真係未試過啦，所以咧我就即係問下阿 Keith 啦。So do they have the manpower to do that? Do they ever go? And if they do, when do they go?
Yeah, so they don't go to every single property every year, obviously.
And they don't have too many manpower to do that.
They don't. But the BC assessment actually gets every permit from each municipality every year whenever they're taken out. And they decide which properties they need to physically inspect, which ones they don't have to see, which ones they might be able to use technology to be able to see. They actually even fly airplanes over every once in a while.
Really?
And measure out the size of buildings and ensure that it matches up with what they have on their system.
Okay, so when do they do that by?
So October 31st is the physical condition date. So that's the date that they're looking at your property to see, if you're...
So one day?
It's 1 day is the physical condition. So if you're building and you're opening up your assessment and your house is under construction, you look at it, you say, well, what was my property? What did it look like on October 31st? And what would that have sold for in the market of July 1st? That's how they do the valuation.
Oh, so they don't have like, okay, this is the week of whatever, the last week of October or whatever. So that's the day.
Well, that's the day that they're supposed to. That's the legislation tells them that you have to value the property based off however it is on that day. But all throughout the year, they're sending people out. And you have to make assumptions, right?
So October 31st is kind of like a deadline.
That's right. There's only so many employees. I think there's 600 employees or so in their company.
Oh,
and maybe
whatever then.
200 are doing appraisals. So,
physical one?
They're doing, some of them are actually going out there for sure to go see the properties.
So 200 people is actually working on this property tax things.
That's 200
out of the
600
appraiser.
Well, because there's IT, there's customer service, there's all the websites,
OK。咁我問佢啦，咁原來咧佢話咧10月31號每一年嘅10月31號咧，佢要去即係BC assessment 嗰度咧，佢要去去睇你個物業咧就係嗰日㗎啦。咁但係咧好坦白，點解你永遠都見唔到佢哋咧？因為咧 BC assessment 咧就大概有600個員工，咁啊得200個評估員，你話200個人去睇200幾萬個物業有冇可能咧？即係基本上真係冇啦，即係所以你唔會，我真係未見過啦咁樣樣。咁有時咧佢會咧即係即係會唔係我唔知佢叫即係用啲飛機咧飛過你個物業上空咧，咁然之後咧用啲科技咧，然之後去睇下究竟你個物業係咪真係咁大咧？即係喺個政府嗰個 registration 嗰度咧係咪真係咁嘅樣咧？即係佢會用啲科技嘅嘢咧嚟到去 confirm 一下呢個物業嘅情況嘅。Okay, so now I want to ask one thing is that if I feel that my property, So what is, okay, let's look at the residential. Mm-hmm. The residential one, so how much has it changed from last assessed to this, comparing to this assessed? And maybe just give us top 5.
For sure, yeah. Each municipality is different, but the top 5 right now of the bigger municipalities in BC are Langley at 15% increase for residential, Kelowna at 13% increase, Kamloops was 12% increase. Both Prince George and Surrey were 12% increase. And then Burnaby saw a 10% increase.
Okay, 咁我就問佢啦，我究竟咧由舊年到今年咧有邊幾個區，即係因為咁多個省、咁多個市，我哋唔會講晒嘅。唔該你頭5名啦，即係起嘅咧嗰個百分比咧係起得最多嘅。咁佢話咧最貴咧起得最多嘅咧就係 Langley 啦，15%。跟住咧就係 Kelowna 啦，就13%，跟住咧就係 Kamloops 就12%，咁咧就 Prince George 啦，同埋咧 Richmond 咧就起咗係就6%。最嬲尾咧就係 Burnaby 啦，咁啊 Burnaby 咧就起咗10%，咁所以變咗咧就即係同大家講啦，你有好多啲嘢咧喺過去嗰1年咧就係即係都係雙位數字咁樣去。So Richmond is not bad. Richmond is only 6%.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Richmond 咧就起得即係唔係叫最少啊，不過係屬於少啊。最少其實起得咧係溫 溫哥華咧起得個4%嘅啫 Vancouver， 咁然之後咧就 Richmond 咧就係有6%嘅。OK， 咁嗱，如果你講話我哋想知道嘅唔係淨係 residential 嘅，我哋都想知道咧係 commercial 嗰邊嘅。咁啊 commercial 咧，因為我哋好多聽眾可能有啲係買啲 retails 啊。嘅 office 啊，或者係 strata 啊，或者係 industrial 啊，輕工業即係 warehouse 啊，咁嚟到去做收租嘅。咁嗰啲咧又起得多唔多咧 ？So kind of like the business and the others like the retails, the office and all that, and versus the light industrial. Let's look at the business side, like the office and stuff like that. Like who are the expensive one?
Yeah.
Which municipality is the expensive one?
Yeah, for sure. So just looking at my list here, we've got Squamish went up 33%.
Wow.
For the business.
Yeah.
We have City of Delta was up 33%.
Yeah.
Port Coquitlam, the same thing. Chilliwack up 30%.
Wow.
And then Whistler up 30% as well.
Yeah. 咁咧，咁佢就話啦，就講咗幾個俾我哋聽啦。我哋成日咧講好多次啦 ，Chilliwack 啊嘛，係咪？咁啊 Chilliwack 咧佢就30%。Delta 嗰邊咧，佢就33%，OK， 咁跟住咧就有Squamish 啊，係咪啊 ？Port Coquitlam 啊 ，Port Coquitlam 咧佢就有起咗33%，咁跟住咧就有 Squamish 嘅咧就起咗33%。你話呢啲幾緊要咧？即係全部都好緊要㗎，咁所以變咗咧就即係。大家咧就要即係知道呢個情況就係咧過去嗰個 Covid 嘅時間咧，同而家咧嗰個物業咧就真係比起得好多啊！咁如果你講緊應該我哋再講下啦，反而咧嗰個when I want to go back to the residential one, the Chilliwack one is actually only 6%.
Yeah, it's interesting. Usually it's the secondary markets that we saw that went up so much this year. Like some of the larger ones, Chilliwack, Vancouver was only 4%. Victoria was 7%. It's really, the COVID factor. People moved out further out, and that pushed the values.
因為咧，我就問佢啊嘛，我話嗱 Chilliwack 我哋喺個節目嗰度講到好多次關於Chilliwack 啊起得好緊要啊，咁反而咧佢話 Chilliwack 嗰度咧就6%啫喎起咗，咁真唔係咁多啊。反而佢喺嗰個輕工業即係 business 嗰方面咧 ，business 嗰度咧Chilliwack 咧就起咗成30%喎。So what about the light industrials like the warehouses and that kind of stuff？ 咁我問佢啦，咁啊究竟咧嗰個倉庫嗰個情況咧會起咗幾多咧 ？So how much is that?
Yeah, that's the hot one. The industrial market was very, very
hot.
So,
Yes.
Some of the top ones, Abbotsford went up 40%. Chilliwack was up 44%. Port Coquitlam 45%. Squamish up 42%. And Whistler, which only has a few properties, but went up 115% for their Class 5 average.
嗱，你話咧，如果咧即係大家早知啊，係咪？我哋成日都話，唉，有早知就咁啦嚇，係咪？原來咧個 industrial warehouse 嗰度咧就起得最緊要啊 ！Abbotsford 嗰度咧就起咗40%，Chilliwack 咧起咗44%。Port Coquitlam 咧喺45%，Squamish 咧喺42%，最緊要3位數字起法係 Whistler 115%。咁啊 ，how do you know that if our property tax will increase?
Yeah, so it's all based off your percentage change, but then also what the average change is within your municipality. So for example, if you go up 10%, but the average change in your municipality is 5%, you are 5% higher than the average. So likely your taxes will go up by 5%.
OK. So 佢嘅意思咧就睇下咧其實咧就睇下你個市政府嘅。如果你嘅市政府嗰度咧係go up 即係5% 嘅時候咧，而你嗰個物業咧係即係多咗係10% 嘅時候咧，咁啊好大嘅情況之下咧，你嗰個 property tax 咧就係會高5% 嘅。OK, now I want to sell my properties. I think that I should worth more my properties.
Yeah.
Do you get clients like that?
When I used to work for BC Assessment, we'd get calls every once in a while. People would try and get their assessed values higher because they thought it would get them a higher sale price. So yeah, it happens.
Okay. So that is small percentage.
That's very small percentage.
Yeah. 咁我問佢啊嘛，我話有冇人咧就想賣嘢嘅時候咧，賣屋啊、賣物業啊，總之賣物業嘅時候咧，佢覺得我應該估價高啲嘅，因為我想賣高啲價嘅。咁我話你有冇咁嘅人去，即係有冇啲咁嘅業主咧去揾你哋？佢話有，不過咧百分比就好少。So most likely is we think that is too high. We want to bring it down. So what is the process of appeals? You know， 咁我就咪同佢講啦。我話多數咧，梗係我哋覺得估得太高啦。尤其是咧，佢係7月1號咧就截止啊嘛。我哋知道咧，2022年嘅1月同埋7月之間咧，嗰個物業咧係冚聲上去。大家要記住呢樣嘢。所以你而家今日咧收到嗰個物業咧個估價咧，有個可能性咧就係你隔離屋賣到個物業咧係低過你知道頭半年賣個物業嗰個價錢嘅。咁所以係有分別嘅。So如果你覺得佢貴嘅時候，咁你可以做到啲咩咧 ？So if you know I find it's too expensive, I want to appeal. So what is the process?
It depends if you're talking residential or commercial property.
Residential first.
Yeah, so if it's residential, right on BC Assessment's website, there's a little button that says appeal, and you can click on that, and there's a form you can fill out. And what happens is it submits an appeal into BC Assessment, and then you can expect a call. And maybe if you translate that first, I can explain the next steps that happen.
咁我問佢啦 ，OK， 我哋先講住宅問題啦，唔好講商業嗰度先啦。佢話咧喺 BC Assessment 嗰度咧，嗰個 website 個網頁嗰度咧，佢會有一個字，有一個字咧就寫住 appeal， 即係你去申訴嘅。你點嗰度咧，去點擊嗰度咧，你就會有一個 website 出嚟嘅時候咧，即係你會睇到咧，就係話你可以喺網上嚟到填報，嚟到即係申請，就想即係同佢講話，哦，我覺得。即係我想去申訴啦咁樣樣。Okay, so what's the step 2?
So after that, once the appeal is submitted, it will go to BC Assessment, and you'll then receive a notice of hearing 10 days before your hearing date. And you'll be given instructions on how to upload your evidence. So they'll want you to upload, you know, the comparables or the evidence that you have. And then usually somebody from BC Assessment will also reach out and provide you with their comparable evidence and have a conversation, see what your issues are. And if it isn't resolved, then you can go forward to the hearing, which is a phone call. From there, the evidence that you've uploaded, you refer to that and you kind of walk them through. And hopefully at the end of it, you'll have a chance to get your assessed value reduced. But keep in mind, the assessor is also on that call and they will also provide their evidence. And it will go from there.
OK， 咁佢嘅意思咧就係話咧，好啦，你喺個網上邊填咗嗰個物業嗰個表格，即係你想去申訴嗰個表格之後咧，BC Assessment 佢哋咧就會喺你個即係聆聽你呢個申訴之前嘅10日咧，就會咧就同你講啦 ，OK， 嗱你而家咧就上我哋個網站，再次咧就係上載你嘅證據。點解你覺得你個物業咧係估高咗？咁好啦，所以咧咁嘅情況之下咧，佢就會當然啦，佢唔會淨係聽你嗰邊噶嘛，佢哋嗰邊咧 BC Assessment 嗰度咧都會咧係有啲證據，佢哋嘅證據出嚟就話點解你個物業咧係值到嗰個估出嚟嗰個價位嘅。咁所以變咗咧就如果你覺得話 OK， 我都係即係覺得。我覺得即係如果你覺得咧，就政府嗰度咧 BC Assessment 嗰度咧嗰個證據唔可以令到你服嘅時候咧，咁你可以咧去申請咧，就有一個電話直接嚟到去同佢傾。咁但係你有呢個記住咯喎。你同佢傾，佢呢個評估員咧，亦都會喺個電話嗰度嘅。咁佢哋即係大家咧就會喺度，即係你有你嘅證據，佢有佢嘅證據，咁啊睇下你會唔會好唔好彩咧，就贏啦。贏到嘅時候咧，咁即係話咧，你可以將你嗰個估價嗰個價值咧，就係調翻低啲嘅。Okay, so how much time? I mean, like so if I don't have a phone call, that means it's either agree or not agree.
Yeah, so if the assessor calls you beforehand and you're able to get an agreement, then great, you don't have to go to the hearing. But if you do go to the phone call hearing, they're usually 30 to 45 minutes. You only get 8 to 10 minutes to actually present your evidence. The assessor gets 8 to 10 minutes. The panel that's appointed by the Ministry of Finance, they can ask questions as well as the assessor can ask questions. And then they usually make a decision right there on the spot.Within that 30 to 45 minutes.
OK， 咁佢話啦，最嬲即係話啦，大家第一步就覺得唔服氣 ，OK， 佢要去到同佢喺個電話嗰度咧，就再次嚟到即係同佢究竟咧就即係再講多次，即係想說服佢更多嘅時候咧，咁你嗰個電話咧嗰個大家傾呢個時段咧就大概係30到45分鐘嘅，咁咧你咧個業主咧就有8到10分鐘。去出示你自己嘅證據啦。BC Assessment 嗰邊咧，亦都會有人咧係用8到10分鐘嘅時間咧，亦都係咧去 出示佢自己嘅證據。跟住咧個 panel 啦，即係陪審員啦，係嘛？咁咧就佢哋咧就會咧問問題啦，同你問問題啦。問完之後咧，佢哋就會有一個裁決啦。咁啊，基本上咧喺30到45分鐘之內咧，就會即刻同你決定究竟你上訴得直定係上訴唔得直啦。Okay, so that is residential. Does people usually hire a professional like yourself to do the residential? Because, is it complicated?
Typically people don't, and mainly it's because, for example, if you have a $5,000 property tax bill and you're able to get your assessed value dropped 10% as an appeal, that's only usually a $500 savings. And experts like myself cost considerably more than that. So most of the experts are hired for commercial, multifamily, industrial, major office buildings.
Okay. 佢嘅意思我就話問我 OK 咁啊有冇啲係住宅物業嘅業主咧去聘請佢哋嚟到去做呢啲上訴嘅咧？佢話咧甚少嘅，因為咧就算當你嗰個物業嗰個property tax 嘅地稅咧係5000蚊。咁你就算贏咗咧，可能你最多咧就減10%，咁即係500蚊。你請佢哋咧嗰個價錢咧就仲貴過啲500蚊，咁所以咧就係唔需要去請佢哋嘅。咁邊啲物業嘅業主咧係會請佢哋咧？佢多數咧就係啲commercial 商業嘅物業嘅業主咧就會請佢哋啦。Okay, so let's talk about the commercial situation. How different? How complicated, and can you different classifications? How does it work? So let me just translate my questions. 咁我就問佢啦，我話咧，咁我哋而家咧就試下講下啲商業物業㗎啦，有幾複雜咧？因為咧好坦白講一句，如果你買個 office，買個 retail 咁都係100幾廿萬啫，有可能性 ，OK？ 除非你買個好似成個hotel 啊，成個 mall 啊咁嗰啲咁嘅嘢就貴啦。咁究竟咁嘅情況之下，因為有唔同嘅分類㗎嘛，咁你點樣分類咧？咁樣樣 ，so I was just saying that a lot of the Chinese like investors, they some Chinese, I think the percentage doesn't matter what color of your skin. How many people they all buy a hotel or mall all day long, okay? Yeah. So most of the time, people, they probably buy an office because they do they have their own business, they might well own a property. And they might well, have a retail space, maybe they're pharmacists, and they want to, after renting for a while, okay, I'm going to carry on, business is good, I'm going to buy my own retail spots. So usually it's like that, like for those, I cannot imagine the property tax is too expensive or they actually expensive.
Yeah, it really depends on the size of the property, but they can be really expensive. I mean, I have clients who are paying over $1 million a year in property tax. When you drive through downtown Vancouver, those big office towers, some of those are paying $2-3 million a year in property taxes.
Wow！ 佢話咧，咁啊，梗係啦，要睇下你嗰個物業咧有幾大，即係個面積有幾大啦。佢話即係 downtown 有啲咧，佢有啲客人咧就俾100萬、200萬、300萬嘅地稅都會有嘅。咁好啦 ，so how do you do this classification things? Let's say I buy, like the use of the tenants because I buy it as a retail, okay? I have a retail spot, and then I rent it out. The retail spot, the zoning maybe allow different type of, like use, and so is office. And some office you can just, as office, but if it is a medical building, then it's a different, used by a doctor and things like that. So how does this affect the, the value, the assessed value. So let me translate that quickly. 咁我話咧就好似話齋，如果我咧就我買唔起嗰啲可以俾100-200萬地稅嗰啲啦，我買一個咁嘅或者一個 office 啦，俾我自己做生意啦，或者咧我買一個好似零售店啦，咁或者即係愛嚟出租啦。咁零售店或者 office 有可能唔同嘅用途噶嘛，一啲又可以租俾醫生，有啲可能就咁真係做個 office。有啲咧地鋪嘅時候咧，我可能會俾個波霸奶茶啊，或者會俾個賣雪糕啊，或者俾個 賣 sushi 啊，咁即係嗰啲咁嘅嘢嘅時候咧，咁即係點樣會唔會影響到我哋嘅 assessed value 咧 ？So how does it affect retails and office that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so the use does affect the tax rate that's applied to it. So what we call classification in the assessment world. A great example is industrial properties. You can have some that are being used for manufacturing. So that would be what we call class 5 light industrial, and that would have a specific tax rate. But you could have a building right next door that's being used for more of a retail and storage use, and that qualifies for class 6, which is business and other. And because each municipality applies a different tax rate for the different uses, you can have identical properties paying different amount of taxes based off of who's in there and how they're using the property.
Okay, so 佢嘅意思咧就係話啦，譬如當你係一個warehouse 咁樣樣啦，一個倉庫咁樣樣，佢話你個倉庫咧，你可能租咗俾人咧係愛嚟係做製造業嘅。但係咧，你隔離嗰個倉庫咧，即係隔離嗰業主咧，佢可能咧係俾人哋純粹係愛嚟做貨倉嘅啫。咁你如果一個唔同嘅用途咧，就會有唔同嘅分類啦。咁你唔同嘅分類咁嘅情況之下咧，就有唔同嘅地稅啦。So would that apply the same as for retail, strata retail and strata office?
Retail and office are in the same classification, but if you had an industrial like strata industrial, and you had somebody doing a little bit more retail style and the person next door doing manufacturing or distribution, then it could apply. But there's also, in BC, there's actually 9 different classifications.
Wow.
And it's really important to have an expert to help you out with that, because there's a whole bunch of legislation and case law that directs what classification should be applied for what use.
佢話咧，成個省咧就有9類不同嘅分類嘅，咁所以變咗咧，即係唔同分類咧就有唔同嘅估價嘅情況，所以變咗即係你咁嘅情況之下咧，就即係你需要咧專業人士咧去同你去睇清楚咧，究竟你嗰個稅啊property tax 啊，會唔會因為你嗰個租客嘅用途咧，令到咧就會有好大嘅分別。But as a commercial like property owner, the I don't have to pay. It's triple net.
That's right. But
so like why do I care? Because my tenants pays for it. So let me quickly translate that. 我嘅意思就係話咧，即係如果我係一個商業物業嘅業主咧，根本咧我嘅租咧就唔會係即係所謂我嘅 property tax 地稅就唔係我交噶嘛，係啲客戶交嘅。咁點解我要咁緊張咧？咁 so yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, if you looked at a property that's on triple net, the tenant looks at it and says, this is how much I'm paying for my basic rent, the triple net, and this is my additional rent. And so as a landlord, if you're able to reduce your additional, you might be able to boost up your triple net a bit. So the net result would be the same to the tenant, but you as a landlord would be getting more from it. And the key there is the way to reduce your additional rent is to make sure that your property taxes are as low as possible.
OK，佢嘅意思咧就係你係需要知道嘅，因為咧你哋即係算法嚟講咧，就係話你一咧就係租金啦，二咧就係你嘅地稅啦。咁如果你係正所謂咧喺嗰個雜費嗰方面咧，如果你可以減少啲嘅時候咧，就 make sure 咧你嗰個地稅嘅時候咧都係俾業主咧你個 tenants 咧嚟到去付嘅。咁總之喺某個情況之下咧，係對你咧係亦都係需要嘅。So as far as I know, many retail strata or office landlord, owner, they like to use gross, rent.
Yeah.
And is it a very, like, is it beneficial when you charge gross and versus triple net?
It's an owner decision, definitely, to make your decision versus gross versus triple net. But if you do, as a landlord, if you are doing gross, then you're the one who's responsible for those property taxes. And so you will care that, the assessed value is lower, the property taxes are lower, or the classification is lower. A great example is daycares. Not a lot of people know, but if a daycare is in your office space, that portion of the space should actually be class 1 residential. And because the tax rate for residential is 3 times lower than your business rate, it can have a huge impact on your total property taxes.
Wow, OK. So 我哋廣告之前咧我就解釋埋呢個啦。佢話咧當然啦，你嗰個 gross 同埋即係或者係 triple net 咧係你自己一個業主咧嚟到去決定嘅。咁但係咧，如果你去做一個 gross net，因為有時覺得哎呀唔好咁煩啦，我3000蚊啦，我怕佢唔俾稅啊，我幫佢俾埋啦，咁變咗稅方面咧就要你自己去做呢件事啦，即係你要去負責啦 ，OK？ 咁但係咧for example 嘅意思咧就好似話咧，有啲咧係 office 嘅，有啲係 office 嗰度咧會有啲租客咧係做 daycare 嘅 ，OK？ 咁你湊細蚊仔嘅時候咧，喺呢個政府assess 個 value 嗰度咧，佢係屬於咧係 class 1嘅 ，OK， 咁但係咧，如果你係個 residential 嘅時候咧，就唔同嗰個residential 係平啲噶嘛，即係嗰個住宅物業嗰個稅務咧係平啲嘅。咁但係咧個 daycare 嘅時候咧就係多3倍嘅，因為呢個 business 嗰方面，所以變咗有好多啲嘢咧，你哋要好清楚，要好小心咧，究竟你嗰個地稅嗰個你個租客啊，會影響到你第時嗰啲地稅嗰個升或者係跌會極度之有影響嘅。咁我哋一下其實咧華人裏邊咧都好多啲人咧係好多啲業主咧係買高爾夫球場嘅喎。嗱，高爾夫球場咧就即係其實好坦白啦，好多啲係唔賺錢嘅。咁究竟咧，佢如果你真係收到嗰個物業估價嗰陣時係點樣樣咧？咁如果你覺得話我太貴啦，咁我又點算咧？可唔可以即係去申報話你可唔可以同我即係減平啲咧？咁樣樣。So Keith, let's go to a little bit, like not as common properties is golf course.
Yes.
Not everybody makes money to be the golf owner. We know the President Trump, stories, right? So can you tell us, do you have an example you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I actually represent a golf course right now.
Oh.
And the way the assessor had done it last year is based off of hypothetical number of rounds, how much they charged per round, what the expenses would be, how much retail they would get, what the capitalization rate should be for a golf course. And then determine a final value. But it is a complicated process. It's also definitely one that I'd recommend an expert on. So.
OK， 佢嘅意思咧就係政府咧點樣去估價咧，即係估呢啲咁嘅高爾夫球場咧。佢話啦，即係你知啦，如果打高爾夫，我哋嘅聽眾之中有打高爾夫嘅咧，你會知道咧，你打幾多個 round 嘅。OK， 咁你有幾個 tea time 啊？你有幾多個啊？即係你 book 幾個 tea time， 一日可以有幾個 tea time 啊？咁樣樣，跟住咧每一個 tea time 你係幾多錢 ？OK， 即係每個 round 你幾多錢？跟住咧你嘅expense， 你即係你嘅支出係幾多？再加埋咧就係話通常呢啲 golf course 咧都有零售店噶嘛，咁你賣嗰啲零售嘅收入係點樣樣？跟住咧就成個正所謂咧個 cap rate 啦 ，OK。So now, honestly, is there any way that is accurate?
Well, it's a challenge. I mean, the assessors have to assess every property in BC, so they can't get them all right.
So do they actually physically go in this situation?
They don't physically go. They have to try and guess what would be the amount that they can pay or that they would receive per round, how many rounds approximately they would have per year.
Do they need to ask them to submit their balance sheet?
Yeah, often they do. They ask, but there's not everybody gives that information, right? So it's a challenge for sure for all the assessors.
咁我頭先同佢講嘛，我話哇你有幾多 round 又知兩樣嘢嘅時候，咁佢話估嘅啫喎，即係估你有幾多個 round。咁講真嗰句啊，哇好難估嘅喎。咁我話咁政府咧會唔會問啲即係啲商家，即係高爾夫球場主啦，然之後攞即係公司嘅報表啦，係咪？咁講真嗰句，有邊個真係要俾你咧？俾你究竟係咪真係正確嘅咧？咁呢樣嘢真係好難估嘅。Then if that is the case, now you're representing the golf course. Are you representing them that is assessed too high or what is it?
Yeah, assessed too high. So I get the financials from my client. I look at the actuals that are taking place. I compare those to what the assessments are. And then also golf courses fall into a unique classification. So that's the tax rate again. They're in class 8 which is a recreational, or at least their land portion is. It gets quite complicated, but you review everything from the income, the financials to the classification, and then you provide the information to the assessor and hopefully get some reductions and work through it.
咁佢嘅意思咧就係高爾夫球場咧屬於叫做第8類嘅分類咧，分類裏邊咧係屬於第8類嘅。咁咧係屬於即係啲休閒性嘅物業啦，同埋啲地啦。咁佢咧而家咧就代表一個高爾夫球場場主咧，咁咧就去即係話啦，政府估得佢太高啦。咁嘅情況之下，佢就會問個場主咧就攞晒佢成年嘅即係收入啦。咁然之後咧就同比較一下咧，政府嗰個 assess value 嗰度咧，佢出嚟咧，佢估嗰度估得啱唔啱啦？咁將所有嘅收入啊，或者係即係支出啊，總之猛咁計數啦，計完出嚟咧就希望咧可以幫到佢嗰個業主咧，就可以高爾夫球場嘅場主咧係可以稍為咧就即係可以平啲咁樣樣啦。Now when it comes to that, how much like how much can you actually help them to reduce and how complicated the process? Do you, I cannot imagine you can just go to the appeal button and submit evidence.
Yeah.
Right?
Most of these commercial properties will end up at the second level of appeal. So if you're not satisfied with the first decision that happens out of that hearing we were discussing, you can go to the Property Assessment Appeal Board, and that's a more involved process. There's much more discussion, negotiation, back and forth, exchanges of evidence, and hopefully you end up with a result. But for example, this property, I've been working on it for about a year now. So
a year.
I mean, you
from last assessed to this assessed value.
And you have to think, I haven't worked the whole year on one property, but because you have to exchange information and then let them do research and then they give me information, let me do research, it's a back and forth process. And also there's so many properties that are under appeal, not that many, there's less than 2% that are actually appealed, but of those that are working, the assessors have to work through each one, and so they have limited time to be able to spend on each one of these. But to answer your first question, you can be very successful and help people significantly and drop their values 10, 20, 30%, but it all depends on the property, it depends on the situation involved.
So you said that it's only about 2% people they actually do the appeal.
In all of BC, less than 2% typically appeal their values.
OK， 咁佢嘅意思咧，佢話咧，其實成個BC 省咧，基本上咧，只不過有大概2% 嘅業主咧，係真係去做呢個即係去呢個即係正所謂 appeal 啦 ，OK， 申報即係話我覺得太貴啦之類咁樣。咁但係咧喺呢啲咁嘅情況之下咧，呢啲咁嘅高爾夫球場啊，或者即係商業嗰啲咧，佢哋咧係有本事咧係可以令到佢減10到30% 嘅地稅嘅，咁呢個咧係非常之緊要嘅。So when you talk about 10 to 30%, just hypothetically, how much does a golf, like property tax, range from?
Yeah, so if you say if a golf course is paying $60,000 in taxes and you save them 10%, that's $6,000 in savings. So 20% is $12,000. But it really depends on the property. There's a lot more appeals on a percentage basis in the commercial. So I think a few years ago, industrial properties in the Lower Mainland, about 20% of industrial properties were appealed.
20%.
20%. So it's a lot higher in the commercial, industrial, and those areas because the tax values are a lot more.
Yeah.
So it incentivizes going through and hiring an expert and looking at it.
So your 2% is just the average.
Yeah, that's the average, but that includes the fact that 88% of all properties out there in BC are residential. And most residential people will accept their assessments and not worry about it.
Okay.
But when you get commercial, that's when
OK， 佢嘅意思咧就即係話咧，BC 省嘅咧88%咧就多數咧都係即係住宅物業嚟嘅，咁所以咧喺呢個情況即係。多數我哋咧都會認命㗎啦，即係佢話幾多就俾幾多咁樣樣。咁其餘嗰啲咧就係商業嗰啲啦，就以 嗰個industrial 咧貨倉啊嗰啲咧係最為有多人咧係真係去即係申請咧或者係appeal 咧喺1月31號之前咧去 appeal 嘅，咁呢一個百分比咧係佔到成20% 嘅，因為佢哋嗰個物業嗰個地稅咧係高好多嘅。咁而嗰個高爾夫球場咧，佢話咁大概係6萬蚊左右啦一年。咁你6萬蚊嘅，如果佢可以幫佢減到10% 嘅10%嘅，咪即係6000咯。20% 嘅咪即係12000蚊咯。咁所以咧，佢哋都係覺得值得嘅。So in the last 4 minutes, let's talk about like roughly how much we actually pay as back to the residential part. How much per $1,000 that we actually like paying for it. 咁我咧就想喺最後嗰3-4分鐘咧，就同大家分享下咧，究竟我哋嘅住宅物業啊，每1000蚊究竟邊個市咧係交得最多最貴嘅地稅嘅咧 ？So give us a few example.
Sure.
Is the Vancouver most expensive? Or is it not?
Well, so it's all controlled by each municipality, what tax rate they apply. Vancouver itself, if I look to last year's number, you paid $2.69 per $1,000 of assessed value.
Okay.
Versus if you were to go up to Chilliwack, you were paying $4.04 per $1,000. But of course, the value of the homes are different too.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. True. But then still, 1 million, 1.5 or whatever millions, right? So 佢嘅意思咧就係佢話啦，我以為咧我哋溫哥華咧係俾得最多稅，原來唔係啊！佢頭先話咧，即係個數據出嚟咧，就係溫哥華咧住宅物業咧，其實每1000蚊咧就俾2個6，每1000蚊俾2個6，反而咧喺 Chilliwack 咧每1000蚊咧係俾4蚊嘅喎。每1000蚊俾4蚊啊 ！Wow, that really is something that I never thought of. Like, what is the others? Like, what about Burnaby?
Yeah, well, an interesting one is Burnaby and Coquitlam, which are neighboring areas. So if you own $1 million property in Burnaby, the rate there is $2.84 per $1,000 versus right next door, it's $3.26 per $1,000. So it's actually
Burnaby is cheaper.
More. Yeah, Burnaby is cheaper for that same $1 million property.
咁啊，聽住啦，大家，原來咧你俾你喺100萬買喺 Burnaby 同100萬喺高貴林咧，有呢個咁快分別啦。100萬喺 Burnaby 買嘅時候咧，你係俾咧就即係so every 1,000 you pay 2.84, right? So 即係每1000蚊咧，你係俾兩個8嘅啫。但係咧，你喺高貴林，咁你諗住應該高貴林會平過 Burnaby 啦，唔係，高貴林咧係俾3個2毫6㗎，3個2毫6㗎。咁所以大家咧要知道啦，即係呢啲咧，即係如果你想知道啦，或者有呢啲咁嘅數據嘅時候咧，咁我都可以同大家分享下嘅，當係八卦下又好啊，咩都好啦，因為你住咗嗰度就係住咗嗰度噶啦嘛，你冇辦法噶嘛，係咪先？咁但係咧，呢啲數據出嚟咧係非常之interesting 嘅因為咧溫哥華先原來係2個6，我哋喺度呱呱叫，咁但係原來咧最貴嗰個咧係 Chilliwack， 每1000蚊咧就要俾4蚊。咁啊今日咧就真係好多謝咧Keith 咧就同我哋分享咧就即係呢啲數據，同埋咧如果真係要請啲專業人士揾佢哋嘅時候咧，佢哋都唔平嘅。So just curious. How much do you charge? By hour or by the whole package?
You know what? There's different ways to do it. So sometimes we actually charge based off the savings. So if there's no savings, there's no charge. So it's a percentage of the savings. Other times it's by hour, and then other times it's just a flat rate that we quote to say, to do the work, regardless of the outcome, this is what it would cost.
佢意思咧就3樣啦，如果咧就冇改變嘅，又即係唔係同你慳唔到嘅，咁啊唔使錢啦。咁如果同你慳到嘅時候咧，咁啊 charge 個百分比啦。咁所以變咗咧，即係或者咧有啲咧就係 flat fee 嘅 ，OK 一個數咁就去㗎。咁所以變咗咧就即係點都好啦。如果你知道你自己物業咧係非常之貴，咁你覺得佢唔應該咁貴，咁啊你自己去決定究竟需唔需要請呢啲專業人士。但係咧聽Keith 講咧，我哋咧住宅物業嘅咧多數都係認命嗰隻㗎啦。今日咧就好多謝啦，再次多謝啦 Keith 咧同我哋分享咁多啲 唔同嘅資訊。如果有啲咩需要嘅時候，可以俾個電話我604-412-5860，412-5860。So thank you, Keith, today
Thank
to
you.
share all this information. It's gonna be a very interesting couple more weeks before is expire. 其實總之大家記住啦，1月31號係截止日期㗎啦。如果你想 appeal， all right, see you next time. 下個禮拜再見，拜。
Thank you very much.
Yeah.